Well, I am Stephanie Blanchard with the Chamber. I am the Programs and Social Media Coordinator. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. With more than 20 years of experience, Dorinda possesses a proven track record of increasing organizational effectiveness, shaping cultures, strengthening teams, and positioning clients for sustainability and growth. Dorinda's diverse employment background includes workforce, outreach, sales and economic development in community colleges, manufacturing, and universities. Dorinda holds a master's degree from Muskingum University and a bachelor's from Ohio State and a business development consultant at the Ohio Auditor State, where she helps improve efficiency, effectiveness, and economy of government programs and organizations. She loves to cook, read, walk, travel, and spend time with her husband and spoil her nieces and nephews. Please help me welcome Dorinda.
Thank you, Stephanie. You have been absolutely delightful to work with. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and the Knox Chamber and some members today. So thank you all for joining us. The good news for you today as we start our webinar is at the Auditor of State, we don't audit you personally, and we also don't have anything to do with property taxes. So two pieces of good news as we do get started. Audit, though, makes people a little nervous, so I like to start with a joke with our presentation. But people have told me my jokes need to improve, but I try to think about my little 8-year-old nephew, and if he can go to school and tell the joke, it's probably okay for Aunt Dorinda too. So Valentine's Day is coming up, and the Australian Open just finished. So our first joke, did you hear about the two tennis players that fell in love? It was a courtship. All right, so with that, we are going to start with our topic today, time management, how we work smarter, not harder. Our agenda for today, we're going to have a little overview of what our office does because, as I mentioned, people don't really know who we are and what we do. We're going to talk a little about core values and career vision and how that helps us with time management. We're going to talk about some time management techniques and strategies, how we build effective habits, share some resources, and have any questions that you all have. My goal today is to give you all a lot of information that you can kind of pick and choose from and take back and apply at your workplace and possibly even in your personal life and be able to share with others in your network. Just so you all know, Stephanie has kindly agreed to share the slides afterwards as well, so the slides will be available to you. So we're going to start by just putting in the chat name, role, organization, and favorite Valentine candy, just to kind of get to know each other and everyone that's here. So if you all want to go ahead and do that while I am going through some of the slides, you already know me, but my favorite Valentine candy is probably those little marshmallow peeps. They're available now for almost any holiday. So I absolutely love those. Pure sugar, I know. And then I also like the candy on the slide here, those conversation hearts, more pure sugar. So all right, an overview of who we are and what we do at the Auditor of State's office. We are one of 5 independently elected offices in the state of Ohio. The others are Secretary of State, Treasurer, Governor, and Attorney General. It's our job to put those checks and balances on governments on behalf of taxpayers. And you see 3 words at the bottom of our slide, and that Stephanie mentioned when she introduced me: efficient, effective, and transparent. So we're trying to help government be efficient about their spending. And I'll give you a couple of examples. We're trying to help government be effective with spending. We're also trying to make sure that your tax dollars are spent lawfully and appropriately. And then finally, transparency. We are responsible for the public records training that goes out to local government officials around the state. Some responsibilities of our office. Financial audits is one of our key responsibilities. So with our financial audits, we're going back to any entity in the state of Ohio that receives tax dollars. It might be a cemetery, it might be a library, it might be a school district, a township, etc. We are taking a look then at how those tax dollars were spent and reviewing those records, kind of going backwards to making sure that transactions were lawful and appropriate. We crank out about 4,200 audits per year out of our office. Every entity in the state of Ohio that receives tax dollars is audited. All of them are on a schedule. So just depending on the schedule for the entity is how often they are audited. Please look at our website. I just had a chamber ask me about this yesterday, data and IT audits. And the reason I bring that up is we're seeing a lot more incidents of cybersecurity fraud among local governments. And these are happening with businesses too. So there are some pointers and resources available on our website. So please take a look at that. We're seeing things like vendor redirects where someone emails in and says, "Hi, I'm your paving company. I need you to change your banking information." We don't want you to do that. So please take a look at our website for some of those pointers regarding cybersecurity and things that you can put into practice in your business. Special audits. Fraud is a hot topic lately. If you see something that you think is fraudulent within government, you can report that to us. And there are 4 ways you can report that. You can report that on our website, through an email address, through a toll-free number, or through a letter. We review every single complaint that comes into us. And if it is deemed to be something that might be inappropriate spending, we take that through a comprehensive investigation. We have about 154 cases that are in progress right now of kind of working their way through that investigatory process. Performance audits. We work a lot with local governments and also school districts in this area, and we're almost operating there more like a consulting group. So we're trying to look at our programs operating as effectively and efficiently as possible. We just looked, for example, at the Department of Aging and how services are being provided to our seniors with a performance audit. And we're currently doing one on the power siting board here in Ohio as well, because energy is a hot topic. Helping and training, that's obviously what we're doing here today. So those are a few of the responsibilities of our office. Our auditor, Auditor Faber, one of the things I like about him is Auditor Faber doesn't ask us to do anything he isn't willing to do himself. He's a very hard worker, started off as a janitor at age 12, and he recently actually prosecuted a case in Allen County. We had a case of fraud up there. He went up and actually prosecuted the case himself. He is an attorney by trade, and he's also a Watchdog of the Treasury Award winner in the past. A few more stats about our office by the numbers. So by the numbers in our office, we have 5,900, believe it or not, state and local governmental entities that we audit. I mentioned how we crank out 4,200 audits. There are a lot of governments that we are auditing in the state of Ohio. That next number, 3.8 billion, we have a software program called our Uniform Accounting Network software program. And that program actually tracks spending for local governments. About 76% of local governments in Ohio use it. And so there are about 3.8 billion of your tax dollars flowing through that program. That next number, 124,000, Medicaid is the largest line item in the state of Ohio budget by far. So we have a whole department that does nothing but audit the Medicaid program. What we found a couple of years ago when we did an audit was we found that there were 124,000 individuals who were enrolled in Ohio's Medicaid program and that of another state. And that was costing Ohio taxpayers an extra $200 million a year. So we have worked with the DeWine administration to try to put some safeguards into place there. And also the feds did a similar audit this year, and it was found that there were some individuals enrolled in as many as 5 states' Medicaid programs at once. So the feds are also taking a look at this. That next number, 6.4 billion, our office identified early on some COVID unemployment pandemic fraud. Unfortunately, there were individuals like myself where an unemployment claim was filed in their name. We identified 6.4 billion of this misspending. A lot of those dollars, unfortunately, went overseas to places like Nigeria, where it's very tough to get that money back. We were one of the nationwide leaders in identifying some of this misspending. And as a result, we were able to keep our figures lower than some other states where they were actually much higher in their misspending with as much as 16 to 18 billion. We did, however, find places like a Franklin County Job and Family Services caseworker where she was actually doing some improper awarding of unemployment compensation to family and friends. And we were able to prosecute her then and send her to jail for that. That next number, 154, we actually have 154 convictions of individuals for misspending your tax dollars since Auditor Faber came into office in 2019. We have 800 employees based all around the state. And then that next number, we maintain a toll-free hotline where local governments can call us and get help, whether it's with that software program or just other questions they have. Last year, we fielded 1,704 calls to that number. And then finally, we have 28 million, a little over 28 million in what we call findings for recovery. And that's where we are able to do things like claw back individuals' public pensions if they are misspending your tax dollars. What do you think these items might have in common? Anybody have any ideas? Believe it or not, these are items that were purchased with your tax dollars. So I mentioned earlier, we are looking at fraud. On the left-hand side of that slide, you see a limousine ride and some sporting tickets. That was our case at the Columbus Zoo. The Columbus Zoo receives tax levy money, and we did an investigation there, and individuals from the president of the zoo down to a fiscal clerk were involved in purchasing things like limousine rides and sporting tickets for family and friends. The middle one, my nieces and nephews live in Belmont County over on the river bordering Wheeling, West Virginia, and the Wheeling Island Casino. There was actually a director over there of a housing authority who was supposed to be providing housing to individuals with developmental disabilities. And instead, she was going over to the Wheeling Island Casino, among other things, and gambling with your tax dollars. On the right-hand side of the slide, we have a swimming pool. The Athens County Metropolitan Housing Authority director was actually convicted of a little over $2 million in fraud. And one of the things that she did was purchase a swimming pool for her home with your tax dollars. And then finally, the lower right-hand corner are wildebeest. That's one of our more unusual fraud cases. We actually had a fiscal clerk in Vinton County who was purchasing animals like a wildebeest for his personal zoo with your tax dollars. And the auditor wanted to have a ox roast with the wildebeest, but we said no, the wildebeest could live out his useful life at an animal sanctuary in Florida. So that's where he is. All right, now our topic for the day, time management. As I said, we do 4,200 audits per year, so we know a little bit about time management in our office. It's very important that we have to keep our audit work on schedule because it has real consequences, such as potential increased fraud, such as potential opportunity for local governments not to be able to borrow money at as good of a rating if we don't get our audit work done on time. So one of the first things we're going to talk about is core values and career vision and how that ties to time management. Why do our core values matter when we think about time management? Well, because our time is limited and we've really got to think about doing what matters most to us, not just doing more. We also want to think about working on the kinds of things that mean the most to us because we feel more satisfied and more fulfilled when our work is in alignment with our core values. Also, we don't want to be saying yes to the wrong things and no to the right things. We want to be able to fulfill ourselves and we want to be able to spend more time on those things that truly matter to us. So that's where our core values can help us really identify what's most important to us. Using our core values to make better leadership decisions and value decisions can also help us. A couple of ways we want to do that. Think about times when you felt the most energetic and think about what you were doing when you felt that energy. Also, and I did this, ask some of your colleagues, friends, family, what are 3 to 5 words that they would use to describe you? It's interesting. You'll probably see some good patterns there, and those words can actually help us to identify our core values as well. So really starting to think about your core values, using some of the people in your life to get some of that information, and also that introspection and reflection. We're often so busy that we don't take a step back to really think about what is most important to us and what are some of our core values. But that's where that time spent in reflection can really help us make better choices later. I've got a core values exercise in here, and I challenge you to take this back. And one of the attendees at our workshop recently is actually going to take this back and do this with her team to help her team kind of define some core values for a team. So this can be done individually as you. It can also be done with your family, and it can be done with your team at work. There is a link in here to this worksheet. And what you're going to see is you start off with a list of values and core words. You're going to start limiting that then in the second step. You're eventually going to get it down to 5 core values for you. And then you're going to write statements that go along with each one of those values. So I really encourage you as a follow-up to this to do this core values exercise so you can think about how you want to spend your time and what is most important to you. We're also at kind of the beginning still of the new year. So it's a great time to kind of take stock of where we might want to go with the rest of 2026 that's remaining to us. Some questions to consider as you're thinking about your values and putting those together. One of the things I like to encourage when you think about values is your core values touch every aspect of your life. So we see that diagram down at the bottom. We want to be thinking about things like our personal life, our family, our professional life, and some of our other relationships when we put these values together, because we can't necessarily separate those values. They touch every aspect of our life. So what are the values that are common to us, whether we're in a work setting or whether we're in a personal or family setting? The other thing is thinking about how do you feel when the values you identify are present in your life or not present in your life? Once you have those values, you can then put together a career vision statement. And I also like this because a lot of times when we're thinking about time management, we're thinking about our career. So we want to think about what are some of those values, what are some of our strengths, and then we want to think about how are we going to use those values and those strengths? What do we want to achieve in the next 10 to 20 years? So you see an example of a career vision statement down at the bottom that provides some direction and can help us really make those choices about how we spend our time. So again, I also encourage you, put together that career vision statement, and you can also put together a vision statement for your family as well. So again, not just something we can use in our personal life, we can also put together a vision statement in our family life as well. The clear framework. Once we have those values and once we have that vision statement, and even if we don't, we can start thinking about how we spend our time and asking ourselves questions using something like the clear framework. And what we're going to think about here is how we're spending our time connected to our mission, vision, or core values. If it's not, maybe we need to rethink that activity. Is it linked to one of our goals, the activity that we're doing, or that date that's on our calendar? Is it essential, something that only I can do? Is it advantageous? Is it something where you're investing in your future self and your future life that you want to try to get to? And is it reality based, or are you kind of maybe over perfecting it? So the clear framework can be a great way to help us start asking questions about how we are spending our time. Some time management techniques and strategies. I love this matrix example, and I especially concentrate on that one on the left-hand side, the Eisenhower matrix. The other two are just similar versions of that original Eisenhower matrix. And when we look at the matrix, what we see is on that left-hand quadrant, we're looking at something and whether it's important or not important. On that top quadrant that's going horizontally, we're looking at urgent or not urgent. And what we find with most people is we're not able to spend as much time in that quadrant two, that not urgent but important. Things like long-term planning that we might want to be doing. We're spending so much time over in that urgent and important crisis kind of mode, or even down there in that urgent but not important area, that we don't ever get to that quadrant of not urgent but important. So our challenge is, how do we start spending more time in that quadrant two so we can start being more effective? Because as we see in that next matrix that's in the middle, we're looking at things like necessity, distraction, waste, and effectiveness. And that quadrant two can really be some of those things that help us start working toward our important goals and things like how we maybe have some more free time. Then when we look at that final matrix, we have kind of a matrix that tells us how to take action and think about some of these things. So quadrant one, urgent and important, we might have to do it now. Quadrant two, those effectiveness things and those not urgent but important, we may have to start scheduling and start blocking some time on our calendar so we have time to do those things. The bottom quadrant, that urgent but not important, we're looking at maybe how we delegate. And then that quadrant 3, not urgent, not important, we're trying to figure out how we can eliminate some of those things. We're never going to eliminate them all, but the key message from this slide is how do we spend more time in that quadrant 2, where we're doing things that help us be more effective? The 1-3-5 rule. I love this rule too because I'm guessing that all of us have more on our to-do list than we could accomplish today. We have more there and we think, well, how are we ever going to get all this done? The 1-3-5 rule I have found can be a great way to help prioritize that to-do list. And essentially what we're saying is we want to look at one major task we're going to try to get completed. What would be a big win for us at the end of the day if we could get this one thing done? What would that look like, and what might be that big win of the day for us? So we want to think about what's that one thing. Then we want to think about 3 other medium tasks. What are some things maybe that we need to get completed today that would be also kind of wins, but they're things that we could also kind of check off our list. And then finally, what are 5 minor tasks? Hey, I really need to return that phone call. I'm going to try to get that done today. So this 1-3-5 rule helps us start thinking about our to-do list and how we prioritize it and how we get some momentum in our day by getting that big win, those 3 medium tasks, and then those 5 minor tasks. And we're going to really try to start with that big win of the day task first, because if we don't, then other things may crowd it out. And we'll talk a little more about that a little later. Some 5 daily productivity questions. I love these questions. Number 3 is one that I especially love. What can I start today that will avoid an emergency tomorrow? I hate emergencies, so I would much rather try to be proactive. So you're always trying to think about, how do I head off something that might be an emergency by doing something today? I also like, back to our 1-3-5 rule, what is one thing that must get done today no matter what? So we can make sure that we prioritize and block that time to get that one thing done. What's something I need to do but don't want to do today? In my case, that might be my travel report. I hate doing my travel report here at the auditor's office. So something I need to do but don't want to do, we're maybe going to get a little bit of a start on that and get some momentum built. Where could I lose a large portion of time today? So thinking about how you might lose time and how you're going to make up for that, or at least if you're aware that you may lose some time, what's the backup plan and how do you minimize that loss of time? So is there a way that you could minimize some of the loss of time? And then number 5, batching those common activities together. So one of the things I like to try to do is batch answering my emails, for example, and allocate time during the day that I'm going to batch and answer emails versus just arbitrarily doing that answering at any given time. Some other aspects of productivity to think about. I mentioned earlier how we may need to have that matrix where we're thinking about delegating. If we're going to have to delegate something to someone, we often don't do that very well. Why? Because sometimes we're not breaking that task down into something small enough for another individual to be able to understand all of the steps. So how do we really break that task down into something that is clear to other people? How do we then motivate people to complete that task? I think about my nephew and cleaning his room. How do we motivate him to clean his room? And then who is the best person? If we are going to delegate something, who is the best person to give that assignment to and why? So we really want to be thinking about who we give an assignment to, how we motivate them to complete it, and how we break it down into something small enough that it is clear what the assignment is and they understand the various tasks involved. Again, when we're thinking about delegating, some other questions that we may want to ask: who's closest to the action? So who is the person who maybe has the most insight because they are closest to where the particular task is taking place? Have we made this decision before? Let's create a playbook. So in our case, I mentioned we do 4,200 audits per year. We have a playbook and a framework for the various types of audits that we are doing. And we've even created a Center for Audit Excellence here that offers us best practices. So if there's something we know we're going to be doing over and over, do we have kind of that playbook playbook, that standard operating procedure, that pattern created. So it's clear to other people how to do it. And then we can easily pass it off to someone else because those procedures exist. Could someone else offer a better perspective? So who else out there might be able to offer a better perspective? And then finally, where is momentum stalled? I think that's really a great question. Where is that momentum stalled? And how do we maybe unblock some of that momentum then? What might be the barriers that are getting in the way of someone being able to be successful with something we've delegated to them? Kanban boards, these are a tool that we have borrowed here at the auditor's office from the manufacturing sector. We have some hybrid work teams here. So some individuals are working from home, some are working in person. Microsoft Teams actually has a great whiteboard tool that you can use for these Kanban boards, and they're great for teams. And you see here, there's some different categories of work, and it's very visual. So everybody can kind of see what someone else is working on. And we've kind of got that backlog. Then we've got our to-do items. We've got some ongoing items, and then we've got items that are done. So this is a great tool for those of us who are very visual and like to kind of see that progress and be able to move things around, and can also be a great tool for our teams to be able to kind of see at a glance what's everybody got going on. The Pomodoro technique. I love the Pomodoro technique. Why is it called Pomodoro? Because the author of the book is Italian, and the word for tomato is Pomodoro in Italian. And what he says is you take a kitchen timer and you're going to set that for 25 minutes. So we're going to try to pick out a task we want to work on. We're going to set our timer for 25 minutes. We're not going to answer our phone. We're not going to do anything else. We're doing very focused work for 25 minutes. And we're going to see what kind of progress we can make on something. Then we get to take a 5-minute break, and then we go back to work and we repeat the Pomodoro. The advantage of the Pomodoro is a couple of things. Number one, I think many of us are struggling to find that focused work time. Pomodoro can help us find that focused work time by blocking out that 25 minutes, and we just focus on that one task and we work on nothing but that. The other advantage of Pomodoro is if we have a task that we do on an ongoing basis, such as a monthly report, we can start timing out how many Pomodoros it takes us to get that done, because we start with one Pomodoro and then we keep timing how many actual Pomodoros does it take us to get that task done. So again, we start being more mindful of our time and how long it actually takes us to do something. The other thing I like about this is if you've procrastinated on something and, oh, hey, I really need to get started on this, but I just can't seem to get myself over the hump. You say, well, I'm going to do a Pomodoro and work on it for 25 minutes and just see what kind of progress I can make in 25 minutes. So I highly recommend the Pomodoro technique. It's a great technique to get started with time management and start being more mindful of how we spend our time. A couple other advantages that I like about it, I feel like it actually gives you a sense of accomplishment too. So you feel like at the end, wow, I got more done than I thought I would in 25 minutes. Again, I can't emphasize enough either that ability to minimize distractions. We're all so busy these days. Being able to have that focused work time can be really, really helpful to us. There is a link in the slides to the Pomodoro worksheet, so hopefully you will be able to check that out and see if it can help you. The flow time technique. If you don't think that Pomodoros offer enough time for you, which my husband doesn't, the flow time technique is for you. Flow time is similar to Pomodoro in that we're going to pick out a task. We're going to record what time we start working on it. We're going to work until we feel distracted or we feel tired, and then we're going to note how long we spent on it. We still get to take a break, but the amount of time that we work can be varied based on how much time that feels right to us. And then we get to take a break based on that amount of time that we spent. So the flow time technique, again, also supports that deep focus and allows us to focus on that task. Again, similar to Pomodoro, we can track actually how long something is taking us. And with flow time, this might be great for a larger project where maybe you need a little bit more time to get into the flow of something. But Pomodoro and flow time are both designed to help us start being much more mindful of how we spend our time and how long something might take us to do, and also to really encourage us to get that deep work time. The rapid planning method, I like this for a really large task, like an event maybe that we're planning or a grant that we're writing, something like that. We're going to really write down what is our goal at the end of this and the exact outcome that we want. And then we're going to put down what are the key steps toward achieving the result and the goal that we want. So this can really help us to make sure that we don't miss steps. We're making sure that we really capture everything that goes into something, and then we're going to put together a plan of how we achieve it. And we can even start using our time management techniques to track how long this actually takes us. But I like rapid planning when we're thinking about something large that we need to get done, to make sure that we really capture all of those steps that we need to take in order to achieve success at the end. Decide what to stop doing. I don't think we often ask ourselves, what are some things that we're doing? Again, not just individually, but as a family, as an organization, that maybe we need to stop doing. So, really starting to look at some activities that we're doing and ask, what's the real value of this activity? What are the alternative uses for time and resources? What are you afraid will happen if you stop the current work? And what are the benefits for actually stopping? So again, we're trying to be more mindful of how we spend our time, and we're trying to think about what's value added and what's non-value added in our time, and how can we maybe stop some things that aren't as value added for us. Building effective habits. I talked earlier about starting that really large task that you have every day. This book is by Brian Tracy, Eat That Frog. And what he says is there will never be enough time to do everything you have to do. So he says that you really want to start with your largest task of the day, whatever that is that might be really difficult, and eat that frog first, because here's what happens during the day if we don't. We get off task and it takes us a long time to get back on task. We're losing time due to a lot of interruptions. So if we don't eat that frog first thing in the day, we may never get back to it. So a couple of things that he says, I touched on this one already. Do the most difficult thing first. That's one of the big premises of his book. Another thing that I like is he wants you to plan every day in advance. So what is our plan going to be for each day, and how will we tackle that? He also says we want to apply the 80-20 rule to everything. So we want to be thinking about, what are the 20% of our activities that get us 80% of our results, and how do we spend more time on that 20% so we're getting more results? So looking at that 80-20 rule and trying to figure out how we're spending our time and what actually gets us the most important outcomes and results in our lives, and how we can spend more time on that. The 5 Choices to Extraordinary Productivity. For anyone here who likes Stephen Covey, this is actually a book from the Covey family. And I really like this book. Very interesting thoughts on time management. So one of the things I really like about it is making sure that we fuel our own personal fire and that we don't burn out. So that's actually a block to make sure that we manage our own energy, as we see down there, number 5 in our diagram. Back to our matrix that we talked about earlier, he wants us to act on the important and not always be reacting to the urgent. So really trying to make sure that we are acting on things that are important to us, and that we're trying to spend more time on the important and in that quadrant too. He wants us to think about the roles that we have, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a slide next, but we're all playing multiple roles. You know, we are an employee somewhere, we are a friend, we are a brother or a sister, some of us are parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, etc. Thinking about those roles that you play in your life and how you spend your time on those various roles is another key premise of this 5 Choices to Extraordinary Productivity. He wants us to make sure that we're scheduling those big rocks. So those things that are very important to us in that quadrant 2, making sure we are scheduling those things that are very important to us. And then also making our technology work for us and not having it working against us. Another framework that I really liked for the 5 choices to extraordinary productivity is the pause, clarify, and decide. Somebody comes up to us and they ask us to serve on a committee. We're going to pause and take a step back. We're going to think about, does this really align with my values, my priorities, the things I want to be spending my time on? And then we're going to make a deliberate decision. This is also great if you're mad about something. Somebody sends you an email, like happened to me yesterday, and you're mad about it. You're going to pause, clarify, and then decide how you respond to something. So this I have found is a really great framework for a variety of challenging situations and how we think about how we spend our time, and also something that's very valuable maybe for some of the young people in your life. I mentioned how the 5 choices to extraordinary productivity talks about defining and elevating roles. And I mentioned a little earlier some of those roles. The book really wants us to start thinking about all the different roles that we play. And it lists a few more here: parent, volunteer, community leader, etc. Then it wants us to think about our time matrix and how we prioritize some of the roles that are most vital to us and identify our most important roles. And then we're going to redefine those ordinary roles that we think are ordinary as extraordinary. So we're going to give them more energizing titles. And similar to at the beginning, we're going to actually create a role statement. So we're going to define, what does success look like in that role? And that can also help us to guide our daily decisions and choices and how we spend our time and focus our energy and make sure we're in alignment with that greater purpose that we have for our life and those greater priorities that we have. So again, we're really trying to look at what roles do we play and how do we spend our time in those various roles effectively. The 2-minute rule for task execution. One of the things we want to think about is we all have those little small tasks on our list. I mentioned earlier, I need to return that phone call. I need to take out the trash. Something that maybe would take us just a couple of minutes. So we want to ask ourselves, if something can be done in 2 minutes, let's do it immediately. If it can't be done in 2 minutes, let's start at least a little something. So we're building some momentum towards getting that task done. We don't want those things to be kind of running in the background for us that we have to get done. And this can help us ease some of that mental pressure of, oh, I have so much to do, by just beating procrastination and getting a little start on something. Either we get it done if it takes 2 minutes or less, or we start with a micro start towards something that's going to help us build some momentum to getting the task done. Mel Robbins is a hot author right now, and one of the premises that she has is the 5-second rule. So thinking about the example I kind of have here is thinking about getting up out of bed is one that I like to think about. So we start to come up with excuses. Oh, I don't want to get up. I don't want to get up. And our mental objections grow louder. So eventually we turn to distractions and distract ourselves and just never get back to doing that activity until much later. What Mel says is we want to count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So we're going to think about when we want to do something. We're going to make that countdown, and then we're going to go starting to get something done, no matter how we feel. And that physical action can actually change our psychology and help us get some momentum going. So this might be another great way to help if you are procrastinating on something. We're just going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And even if you can't get the whole task done right then, again, a micro start towards some momentum of that task list that you have, or that big item or big idea or inspiration. The 80-20 time audit, I touched on this a little earlier in how Covey is really saying we've got to take a look, and so is Brian Tracy, at how we spend our time. What we're being encouraged to do here with this time audit is to be mindful of how we spend our time, track every single hour that we are spending in a week, categorize our tasks by whether they're high, medium, or low impact, and then we're going to try to figure out, again, what's that 80-20 split look like? So what are the 20% of my activities that get me 80% of my results? And how can I allocate some of the time that I'm spending on low impact things more toward high impact? impact things. So we're also trying to figure out here, maybe our priorities have shifted, and most of us aren't stepping back often enough to think about how we spend our time. That tracking of our time and then bucketing our time by high, medium, or low impact can start help us thinking about our time a little differently. And the example down there is, a freelancer maybe is able to shift spending some time from low value added tasks to higher value added tasks like pitching work to clients. Off the Clock, I've put a few book examples in here. Off the Clock is a great book, and what she encourages is that time tracking. And Laura Vanderkam actually has a spreadsheet template on her website that encourages you and really shows you how to track that 168 hours of every week. The other thing she's trying to encourage is 3 daily tasks that truly matter. So when we think about things like our roles, for example, what are those 3 key daily tasks we would like to get done that really matter to us? And also being able to invest in happiness, making sure we plan some joyful activities every day and prioritizing those experiences in our life. Meetings can take an awful lot of our time. A couple of things I've tried to do and we've tried to do here at the auditor's office that we like is starting those meeting times at an odd time. So 10:15 a.m., for example, instead of 10 a.m. Why? Because it allows stragglers to potentially get there on time. Plus, that automatically cuts the amount of meeting time back to 45 minutes instead of an hour. So trying those odd meeting start times, scheduling meetings in 5-minute increments versus 30-minute increments. So can we schedule maybe a 15-minute meeting instead of 30 minutes, for example? Also, another one that I really like is that POST framework. So you see down there at the bottom, the purpose, outcome, structure, and timing. So we're really going to think about before we call for a meeting, here is what we want to get accomplished: an outcome, a purpose, a structure, and timing for that meeting. Email time saving tips. I love templates. So I have a lot of templates that I use for, hey, I'm responding to this email that has a question about X. So creating templates for those emails that you have to send out to people repeatedly. Also starting to think about how we search for emails and being able to think about ways we can make our searches easier and more effective. One of the ways I like searching is, and you see it here in that 4th one down, setting up color-coded labels. So if we have our emails color-coded, for example, we color code things that we've delegated out to someone orange, it automatically makes our searches a little bit simpler because now we're looking for that color coding. Also, really trying to think about hiding some of our emails until the right time and making sure that we file them perhaps in a folder that, hey, I still need to do something here. Creating a waiting for folder for things that you've delegated to someone else. So then you can go back into that waiting for folder and find it. So just a few tips here for how we can better spend time with email. I also included some other resources in here that maybe might be helpful to you and links. And I included our liaisons. We have liaisons that if you have questions, Scott Brown would be yours about our office. They are people you can contact to get help. You can also reach out to me directly. And with that, does anybody have any questions? Well, thank you so much, all of you, for attending today. Stephanie, thank you for the opportunity. I know you will be getting these slides out, and if anybody has follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I really appreciate you all being here today, and hopefully this will give you some things to think about and take back to your workplace and your life and give a shot to. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dorinda. That was a great presentation. I'll
Thank you
definitely be
very
using
much.
the 135 rule in my daily life going forward.
Excellent. Good, good. Well, hopefully there's a couple of things here that you all can use, Stephanie. Thank you so much for the
Yeah.
opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. Have a great
Thank you,
day.
everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.